Now joining us from Rogers Place, Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, it is Charlie O'Connor. We have a little reunion here, an old school BSH reunion. We have Steve and we have Charlie out in Edmonton. Chuck, how are you tonight?
Doing okay, guys. How is everything going for you?
I am choosing to think about Michkov tonight and not the ending of the game. But I do want to ask, are the Flyers too power play dependent now, Charlie?
Ooh, they just now they only are good on the power play. They're not good at 5-on-5. It is an interesting point though, because I just feel like these first 3 games, it's not even that I'm criticizing their 5-on-5 play. It's more that I think that the way these games have played out, they haven't really had the opportunity to even let us see what the 5-on-5 play looks like. They've been so disjointed. There's been so many penalties called on both sides. It just doesn't feel like they've ever been able to get into a rhythm at 5-on-5. And I do think this team is better at 5-on-5 than they've shown so far, but we just haven't really been able to see a sustained game where they can really get into a rhythm and we can see what they really look like at even strength, because these games have just been so disjointed.
Charlie, I got to get your reaction to Matvei Michkov. First 2 goals of his NHL career tonight. First one, he gets greasy, pushes it in behind Stu Skinner. Second one, also on the power play. Little almost one-timer, kind of a wrist shot on a tough angle, puts it right in there. This kid, so many more to come. What did you think of Michkov tonight?
I mean, obviously in the first period, he was the star. And it's a bummer because it would have been such an easy column for me to write if they would have just won the frigging game after the way that first period went. But of course, it's the Flyers, so they have to make it difficult because they're the Flyers and they lose the stupid game. But in any case, yeah, you're seeing a guy who has just been, in my mind, for the first 2 games, he was just banging on the door. He was creating so many chances. He was involved in so many dangerous plays. I was expecting it to kind of explode in the form of like a 3 or 4 assist game before the goal scoring came. But once he got that first goal, you could just see him like, oh, I can score. I can score in the NHL. Okay. All right. Let's see what I can do now. And then he gets that, what really was kind of a sharp angle snipe of a goal for the second one. Like the first one, you're going to see him score a lot of those kind of goals in the NHL because he is going to score greasy goals, probably even more than he scores the highlight reel ones. The second one, though, not really a highlight reel goal, but a goal scorer's goal. Like that's a goal you score when you have just a knack for knowing where the open spots are. And they were both impressive. And obviously he's the story of the game from the Flyers' perspective. But it's just a bummer that they couldn't win because you're setting up for that. They take the 2-0 lead. They then gain the lead again at the end of the third. And it just feels like it's setting up for this like storybook type game, but it's the Flyers and they don't do storybook.
What did you think of Jett Luchanko and his role tonight, Charlie? We thought we had our first Jett goal, but it ends up being credited to Bobby Brink on the Ekholm deflection. We also see him have a couple of chances on the doorstep late. He was matched up with McDavid a lot. I want to ask about Couturier in a minute, but Jett Luchanko, is he making a case? I mean, he's the #2 center right now. It's pretty clear. What did you think of Jett?
Well, I mean, he's making a case, obviously, in the sense that the coach wants him here. Like, that is the case. The case is that the coach of the team clearly wants Jett Luchanko to be on this team all year. He's throwing the minutes at him. He's not shying away from tough matchups. And so far, Luchanko's holding his own. I mean, I certainly wouldn't go so far as to say I think he's dominating, but he's holding his own. He's holding his own defensively. You can see the instincts. You can see the plays he's making. Couturier actually said after the game that he made some mistakes in coverage, and he expects that from an 18-year-old. But he made plays offensively. Obviously, nearly scores a goal twice on the doorstep with the first opportunity and then the second opportunity. He nearly gets the goal that Ekholm ends up being the one who deflects in. But still, like, that's a stealth point because even though he doesn't get a point on that goal doesn't happen if he's not there. Because if he's not there, then Ekholm has no reason to put his stick down to try to block a pass. So even though Luchanko gets 0 credit by the score sheet on that goal, I guess aside from getting the plus and the plus minus column, like that goal doesn't happen if Luchanko isn't putting himself in the right position. So from a positional standpoint and from a detail standpoint, yeah, he's there and he could certainly hang. The big question for me has always been offense. Is this the right place for him to develop his offense? He hasn't scored yet. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the only reason why you make a decision of whether you're going to send him back or not, but it does play a role. And thus far, he hasn't scored. He certainly looks like he belongs. And if John Tortorella had his way, Jett Luchanko would be here for, I guess, all 81 games because they scratched from the one game. He'd be here the whole year. John Tortorella clearly trusts Jett Luchanko more than he trusts most, if not all, of the centers on this roster. So we know where Tort stands. The question is, where will the organization stand when we get to 9 games? And we'll see.
Speaking of Torts' trust in the centers, now there is a 5-minute major in there, so that's time he couldn't play. But Sean Couturier plays a team low 952 tonight. What is going on with Coots?
I mean, I don't really know how I can answer that, you know, like, and also I do think though that this is a case a little bit of, you know, I've made a joke. There was a quote from Mike Schmidt back in the 80s where it was like there's the thrill of victory and the agony of reading about it in the sports page the next day in Philadelphia. And I've turned that into there's the thrill of victory and the agony of seeing people on Twitter scour the time on ice sheets for things to complain about after a game. So I do think there's a little bit of that because like Coots isn't getting a lot of special teams time, and this was a heavy special teams game. So I think that is a big part of it, and it's probably something that like maybe gets brushed aside. That said, look, it's abundantly clear that like right now, John Tortorella doesn't think especially highly of where Sean Couturier is as a player. Like, can he get to a point where he feels better about him? Maybe. But right now, John Tortorella loves Jett. And he's got to play Morgan Frost because Morgan Frost is showing legitimate chemistry with Matvei Michkov. And I do think that Poehling, like number one, Poehling gets a lot of shorthanded time, obviously. But I do think Poehling got extra minutes in this game, in part because they were using the Poehling line a fair amount against McDavid, in no small part because I think Poehling is one of the few players that can keep up with McDavid a little bit. So I think it might have been more of I think the low time on ice for Couturier was a combination of, number one, the lack of special teams. Number two, he probably just isn't that high on Couturier's game right now. And then number three, they were using kind of a combination matchup strategy against McDavid. Like looking at the direct matchups numbers with McDavid. McDavid spent 733 at 5-on-5 against Poehling, and he spent 531 against Luchanko. That strikes me as a very clear plan on the part of the Flyers to match up the fast centers on our team with McDavid because these are the guys that can keep up with him. So I think that it was also partially an individual game strategy because Torts probably had in his head, McDavid's the fastest skater in the world. If I put Couturier and Frost, you have them spend a ton of shifts against them, they're going to get the doors blown off them. So let me put him up against fast centers who can hopefully check him into oblivion. And honestly, they both did a pretty good job. I mean, obviously McDavid at the end of the game, you know, he sets up the third goal and then sets up the game winner. But for the most part, McDavid was pretty quiet. So I think the strategy largely worked. I think there's something here in the sense of John Tortorella clearly isn't that high on Sean Couturier at the moment. I also think it's a little overblown just to look at the time on ice charts because there were factors that explain it at least to a degree.
No, and like he spends 5 minutes in the box, like on after the fight, and there's these games, like you've said tonight, a ton of 11 penalties in the game. There've been a bunch of penalties in every game they've played so far. I've been keeping track. Flyers have so many freaking minors themselves, and if he's not in the regular PK rotation, we know he's not on the power play. Right. When's he gonna get in there?
And I forgot about the 5-minute major, but that's a good point. Yeah. That probably knocks at least a minute off of his time on ice for the game.
Is he the team's go-to enforcer now with Sealer out, Delorier out? Like, is this
him and Joel Farabee apparently?
Corey Perry is such a coward. I said to Steve earlier, he probably has more career fights than Farabee has career games played, and that's what he's out there doing. This team, I cannot wait to play them again. It bums me out. We have to wait until February. Charlie, was there any real good Torts lines tonight? I know they lost, and it's a tough one, so he probably wasn't making jokes up there. But anything good from Torts?
Yeah, not really. I mean, he talked very complimentary of Michkov. Understandably, that's the big story. That's what we're all going to be writing about. But no, he wasn't really giving much. He basically said, "Look, I think we played a pretty good game. I actually thought our third period was our best period." And It doesn't seem like it because we blew a lead, but he was like, we had a ton of chances and we finish on one of those. You know, Jett finishes on one of his chances, Tippett finishes on one of his chances, and suddenly it's 4-2 and we run away with the game. So, like, it's just one of those things where I don't think he comes away from this game particularly frustrated. He's just angry that they lost. I don't think he's frustrated with the team. He's frustrated with the outcome because he feels like they could have won, but it's just a matter of someone has to finish on a chance, and no one at the key moments did.
All right. Yeah. Owen Tippett, man. I want to be able to parlay like 3 games in a row of an Owen Tippett anytime goal because like he's right there. He's right freaking there. If he breaks through tonight, he had a bunch of chances. All right. With that said, it's time for Charlie O'Connor's 3 stars of the game. Hit us with star number 3.
Yeah, I am not at all ready for this. I'm sorry. I was trying to rush back up here. I mean, I don't know. 3rd star of the game. I guess I'll pick an Oiler who scored the game tying goal. I don't know. Bouchard. Give it to Evan Bouchard. Bouchard's 3rd star of the game.
Yeah. All right. Let's do something else then. Travis Sanheim.
Michkov. Come on, done.
Honestly, yeah, it's Michkov 3 times.
It's Michkov mania, baby. Get on board.
I don't care about the rest of the game. Yeah. But this was Travis Sanheim's 500th career game. Charlie, where does the time go?
Yeah, what was it? Sentient Blog basically was like, man, how could that have been 500 games ago for Broad Street Hockey? And I was like, because you're getting old, Broad Street Hockey, Sentient Blog.
Pretty old.
Pretty old.
Right,
almost as old as me.
All right, do you want me to give you 3 stars now?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I'll do 3rd star. I will say Evan Bouchard. Who scores the game tying goal off of a pass from the person who I think is the 1st star of the game. But yeah, Bouchard, good game, a lot of minutes, sure. 2nd star is Matvei Michkov. I mean, if the Flyers would have won, he would have been the runaway number 1 star. Had a great game. Probably if the Flyers win this game, he's number 1 star, and Frost is probably number 2 because he had a really good game as well. But Flyers lost, so sorry, Morgan, you're not the 3rd star. But Michkov, I mean, this was his offensive breakout. We were waiting for it. We only had to wait 3 games. He was great, especially in the first period. He's turned the power play into not only something watchable, but something legitimately good, which is cool. Number 1 star is the best player in the world, Connor McDavid. I know they were able to shut him down for something like 53, 54 minutes. And then, in the stretch of about 6, 7, 8 minutes, he turns the game and wins it for his team. And that's what the best player in the world can do. Like, you could say that like Michkov kind of did that in the first period. He was like, hey, I'm going to take over the game for a 4 or 5 minute stretch. And he did. And that was great. And then Connor McDavid showed up in the second half, not even the second half, really like not even the final third, the final 6th of the game. And just was like, nah, we ain't losing. We're not going 0-4 to start the year. And that's why he's the best player in the world. 1st star.
Thank you, Charlie. I will leave you with this. Through 3 games, Eric Lindros, 2 goals, 1 assist. Okay. Through 3 games, Matvei Michkov, 2 goals, 1 assist.
Love that.
All right, that is Philadelphia's number 1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor, coming to us live from Edmonton, where the Flyers lost 4-3 in overtime. But who cares? Because Matvei Mania is running wild. That bummed me. Like, the Flyers Twitter put out first a tweet that was like, oh yeah, behind the net, of course. I was like, that was directed at me and Kelly. And then they called it Matvei Mania and not Michkov Mania. I was like, now come on.
They've trolled with me a lot in that regard. So that's, yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Chuck.
All right. Bye, guys.
We all silly like the mayor.